They always said the end of the world would come with fire. Turns out, they were right, but not in the way anyone expected. I was stationed at Camp Resolute, near the edge of what used to be Colorado. A few years back, some earthquake cluster had rearranged the terrain like God had grown bored and shaken the planet like an Etch-a-Sketch. Mountains where there were none, lakes where cities used to be. Nothing worked quite the way it did before. I suppose that made it easier, in the end, when the sky burned and we found out we weren't alone. There wasn't much of normal left to lose. I was just a Marine then. Staff Sergeant Jackson Ward, 2nd Shock Division. 17 confirmed kills, 2 deployments off-world, if you counted the Mars quarantine breach, and a decorated graduate of Joint Urban Warfare Academy. In short, a soldier, a good one, loyal, trained, disciplined. But none of that mattered when the adjudicators came. It started like a normal day. We were running joint drills with some reservists, basic perimeter lockdown protocols, simulated insurgency responses, the kind of boring crap that makes you wish someone would shoot at you just for the change of pace. I remember wiping the sweat off my brow and yelling at Private Hansen for the 3rd time to stop aiming his smart rifle like he was trying to hug it. Then the ground shook, not like a quake. No rumble, just a crack, as if space itself had split. We all looked up. The clouds didn't part, they peeled, like something was tearing a hole in the atmosphere itself. Light poured through, not sunlight, something harsher, almost artificial, blue-white and pulsing like a heartbeat. Then came the ships. I don't know how else to describe them. They weren't ships like we designed. No wings, no engines, no heat trails. Just smooth obsidian shapes, like daggers made of starlight and shadow. They didn't fly. They glided, fell, descended, like judgment. One of the privates screamed, "Jesus Christ." Another murmured, "Aliens." No one gave orders. We all just stared. That's when the first strike hit. A beam of green-white energy lanced down from the lead ship, slicing through the eastern watchtower like it was made of paper. No explosion, just disintegration. 1 second the tower was there. The next, it wasn't. Just a puff of particles blown away on the wind. My training kicked in. Contact! Contact! I roared. Rifles up. Take cover. This is not a drill. The camp erupted into chaos. Sirens wailed. Automated turrets locked on and opened fire on the descending vessels. Not that it mattered. Our bullets, even our rail guns, did nothing. The slugs just stopped midair and dropped like dead leaves. Something about that made it real in a way nothing else could. I remember diving behind an armored personnel carrier as another beam obliterated the munitions depot. Fire bloomed. Debris rained. Men screamed. My comms were full of panicked voices, half of them screaming in languages I didn't recognize. And then the voice came. It didn't come through speakers. It came into our heads. This world is under adjudicator mandate. Your species is in violation of Galactic Order 77 Alpha, threat level specimen breach. You are hereby placed under containment protocols. Cease resistance. Comply. My brain felt like it had been hit by 1,000 volts. The voice wasn't words, it was impressions, emotion, cold command, finality. They weren't here to talk. They were here to contain. I crawled to the edge of the APC, rifle at the ready, and peeked out. The lead ship had landed or embedded itself in the ground. The earth around it was warping, shifting like liquid under its influence. And from it poured things. Not soldiers, not robots, just things. They were tall, spindly, jointless, almost like mannequins made of living silver. No eyes, no mouths, just featureless faces and long, limb-like extensions. They moved like shadows but hit like tanks. One of them grabbed Sergeant Keller and froze him in midair. Not froze like temperature, frozen like paused, like someone hit a button and stopped time. Then it dragged him into the ship, just vanished with him. We fired everything we had. Armor-piercing rounds, thermal shells, EMPs. Nothing worked. Hansen panicked, dropped his gun, and ran. They didn't kill him. They tagged him. A beam of light locked onto his back, and in an instant, his body stiffened. He stood still, eyes wide, not blinking, like a statue. We lost 30 men in 20 minutes. I made it out because of dumb luck and a maintenance tunnel. Pulled a few with me. Corporal Reyes, Private Singh, and Lieutenant Marlowe, who'd taken shrapnel to the leg and was bleeding like a faucet. I remember dragging her down the tunnel, breathing like I'd run a marathon, adrenaline turning my hands numb. Reyes kept whispering, "This isn't happening. This isn't real. We weren't ready. We weren't ready." He was right. We had no protocols for this. We made it to the underground comms room, and sealed the blast doors. Tried to get a signal out. Nothing. The satellites were dead. EMPs must have fried half the grid. Or maybe the aliens had simply turned it off. Marlowe died 2 hours later. Blood loss. Shock. I held her hand as she went. She kept whispering a name. Aiden. Her brother, I think. Reyes and Singh wanted to try to reach the evac tunnels, make for Denver. I told them we'd never make it. The adjudicators weren't just attacking. They were changing the terrain, rewriting matter. I'd seen it through the slit in the tunnel grate. Trees turning to obsidian, animals frozen mid-motion, water crystallizing into impossible geometric shapes. They weren't conquering. They were remaking. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The energy pulses ceased. The ships rose back into the air and formed a ring around the Earth. Not orbiting, enclosing, a net, a prison. The voice returned. Humanity is classified as Level 7 cognitive instability. Galactic Council mandates protective containment. You are not to be harmed. You are to be preserved. Preserved. Like we were a threat too valuable to destroy. I looked around at the flickering screens, the emergency lights, the bodies of men and women who died not knowing why. And I realized what they were really saying. They were afraid of us, not out of pity, not because we were weak, because they'd seen something that made them willing to burn the sky rather than let us keep growing. I spent the next week underground. Reyes didn't make it, caught some sort of pathogen from one of the alien growths near the surface. His skin turned transparent by day 3. Singh held on longer. She was tougher than most of the brass I'd served under. Smart, too. She figured out how to hijack one of the surface drones and rewire it into a signal booster. We got out a ping, not to Earth, to off-world. That's when we got our first answer. Not a voice, a single text line. We're out here too. They didn't get all of us. Hold the line. Singh cried when she read it. I didn't. I felt something else. Something old. Something deep. Rage. Because in that moment, it all became clear. They hadn't come to conquer Earth. They hadn't come to save us from ourselves. They'd come to cage us. And if there's one thing humans don't do, it's stay caged. Not forever. By day 10, Singh and I made our move. We climbed through the old wastewater shaft, wearing patched-together breathing gear and armed with what little the armory had left. The world above was quiet. Too quiet. No birds. No wind. Just the hum of alien machines and the buzz of containment fields crackling in the sky. And across that ruined landscape, I made a vow. To the dead, to the living, to the galaxy watching from afar. You think we're monsters? Good, because now we're going to show you just how monstrous we can be. The adjudicators didn't destroy Earth. They didn't need to. Instead, they wrapped it in a cage. Not some rusty prison walls or crumbling barbed wire fences. No, their cage was slick, invisible to the naked eye unless you were close enough to feel the subtle, humming vibration in the air, like electricity mixed with cold dread. They called it a containment field, a globe of pure energy that surrounded the entire planet, stretching tens of thousands of kilometers into space, keeping us locked in but still breathing. The field was impenetrable, at least from the outside. Attempts to punch through with Earth's nuclear arsenals or orbital railguns had failed miserably. The cage was made of alien tech that bent physics like clay. Inside, the world was both ours and not ours anymore. The city still stood, but they were ghost towns. The power grids worked only sporadically, siphoned off by the adjudicators' massive orbital platforms. Communication was monitored, censored, and in many places, dead. But worst of all, freedom was gone. I saw it firsthand during the weeks we spent dodging patrols, scavenging through ruins for food and ammo. The adjudicators didn't bother micromanaging us day to day. Instead, they installed enforcers, biomechanical sentinels scattered across continents, programmed to suppress any hint of rebellion. These things weren't robots. They were living weapons, twisted mixtures of flesh, metal, and nanotech, able to dissolve into mist and rematerialize anywhere within the containment zone. The enforcers made it clear escape was impossible. Resistance was futile. But humans? We don't do futile. Singh and I linked up with other survivors in the Rocky Mountains, farmers, former soldiers, scientists, even children, all driven underground by fear and loss. They called their little network the Hollow, and it became our lifeline. The Hollow wasn't just survival. It was defiance. We hacked radio frequencies, jammed adjudicator drones, and spread word that we were still fighting. Every crackle on the comms was a small victory. Yet, The adjudicators tightened their grip with each passing day. Their containment field was more than just a physical barrier. It was a mental cage, too. On the first day the field activated, every human on Earth felt it. A gnawing pressure inside our heads, a whispering static that drowned out thoughts and dreams. The adjudicators called it the cognitive dampener, a neurosuppressive effect that dulled emotions, clouded judgment, and sapped the will to fight. I won't lie, those early days, it felt like the end. Singh and I had to fight to keep our own minds sharp. We developed makeshift neurostimulators, devices that sent electrical pulses to counter the dampener's effects. They were crude, painful, and often failed. But without them, the emptiness would swallow you whole. Despite the suppression, rage simmered beneath the surface. Anger at being treated like animals. Anger at being caged like endangered pets. Anger at the adjudicators for deciding our fate without even asking. And the more we fought, the more we realized this cage was a gilded one. It wasn't just Earth that was imprisoned. The adjudicators had done something worse. They'd seized control of the world's most advanced research facilities, labs where human scientists had pushed the boundaries of biology, physics, and AI, and repurposed them. Instead of creating cures or new technology, those labs became factories for the adjudicators' dark projects. The worst was Project Genesis. The Hollow found data fragments hinting at it, genetic experiments combining human and alien DNA, aiming to create perfect containment soldiers, hybrids loyal only to the adjudicators. Reading those files, I felt a chill deeper than any battlefield wound. They weren't just locking us in. They were trying to remake us. The irony was brutal. They claimed to protect the galaxy from humans because we were unstable, violent, uncontrollable. But behind closed doors, they were engineering monsters out of us. I confronted one of their captured scientists, a woman named Dr. Lilachin, during a daring raid on a research station deep in the Rockies. She looked tired, but defiant. "You don't understand," she said, voice shaking. "We were desperate. We thought if we could control our own evolution, maybe we could survive this." I spat back. Survive? Or become the same monsters they think we are? She didn't answer. As the months dragged on, the adjudicators' cage tightened. Orbital platforms orbited Earth like vultures, scanning for any spike in electromagnetic signals or human activity. They installed peacekeepers, augmented soldiers of alien origin who enforced quarantine zones with brutal efficiency. Any community caught communicating or arming themselves faced swift retaliation. Entire towns vanished overnight. But humanity's spirit isn't something you erase with tech or terror. We found ways to fight back. The Hollow grew bolder. We built underground workshops, repurposed stolen alien tech, and rigged explosives in adjudicator supply routes. We even managed to hack one of their enforcer units, turning it against them in a spectacular ambush. It was a small victory, but in a war for survival, small victories are everything. One day, Singh and I were scouting near the remains of Denver's old tech district. The city was a crumbled skeleton, but beneath the rubble, we found something incredible, a buried vault, sealed with pre-containment tech. Inside were stacks of ancient hard drives, encrypted data chips, and old-world weapon schematics. I realized we'd stumbled on a hidden cache left by the last human governments before the cage dropped. The message was clear. They expected the adjudicators, and they planned for us to fight back. That night, under the flickering light of a dying campfire, Singh handed me one of the data chips. "We're not just prisoners," she said. "We're soldiers, and this is our blueprint." From then on, our resistance shifted. We weren't just surviving. We were building weapons, building alliances, building hope. But even in the darkest cages, the sharpest edges come from within. The adjudicators weren't the only enemy. In the shadows of the Hollow, a faction emerged calling themselves the Accord, humans who believed compliance was the only way to survive. They preached cooperation, obedience, and surrender in exchange for mercy. I called them traitors. Singh said we should listen. That division tore at us like a knife. Still, I couldn't let their poison infect me, not when the stakes were this high, because in the deepest recesses of my mind, I kept replaying that moment on day one, when the sky burned, and the adjudicators told us we were dangerous. Maybe we were, but they had no idea what danger truly meant. The cage was golden, sure, but gold can be melted, and every cage can be broken. The first time the adjudicators came for me, I was just a kid, no more than 12, standing barefoot in the broken courtyard of what used to be my school. The place was a ruin now, cracked walls overgrown with ivy. Half the roof collapsed. I wasn't supposed to be there. Everyone said kids had to stay in the underground shelters, away from the Judicator patrols. But I'd slipped out. I wanted to see the sky, to feel the sun on my face. For a moment, I was just a kid again. That's when they arrived. They came like ghosts, silent, swift, and terrifyingly precise. Their suits shimmered with dark energy, faces hidden behind opaque helmets. Enforcers, by the look of them, those biomechanical monsters that could shift from solid to mist in a heartbeat. They didn't say a word. They grabbed me. I don't remember much after that, only flashes. A cold cell lit by harsh white lights. Strange machines humming and blinking. Whispers in languages I didn't understand. But what I do remember is this. They thought I was just another prisoner. They thought they could break me. They were wrong. Growing up during the Judicator occupation wasn't like any childhood I'd heard about before. No birthday parties, no school plays, no lazy summer afternoons. It was fight or die. I was different, though. Even back then, something inside me refused to break. When the Judicators took me, I was shoved into a facility deep beneath what had once been Denver, a place they called the nursery. The name was cruel irony, because they were experimenting on children like me, trying to twist us into their perfect soldiers. They ran tests, endless, painful tests. They injected us with alien serums that burned like fire and froze like ice all at once. They trained us in zero-gravity chambers, forcing us to fight simulated monsters until our limbs bled. They drilled discipline into our bones with electric shocks and cold isolation. But no matter what they did, I held on to one thing: who I was. The scientists kept asking questions. Can you control it? They'd whisper, eyes shining with a mix of fear and fascination. Can you channel the energy? Energy? I didn't understand until much later that I was one of the rare humans who had developed what they called a psychore, a latent ability to manipulate electromagnetic fields with my mind. In the cage of the Judicator's containment field, most of us were just caged animals. But I was different. One night, alone in my cell, I felt it for the first time, a surge of power that made the metal bars around me vibrate and hum. The air crackled with electricity as I closed my eyes, focused, and willed the bars to bend. They twisted, then snapped. I ran. That was the moment they realized they'd made a mistake. They'd taken the wrong kid. My escape from the nursery wasn't clean. It was chaos, alarms blaring, enforcers chasing shadows down long corridors. I tore through doors with my bare hands, ripped power conduits from walls to short-circuit systems, and fought like a cornered animal. I was just a kid, but I was fast. I was furious, and I had something the Judicators didn't understand: human will. I made it to the surface, breath ragged, heart pounding. But the world I returned to was a cage, still humming with the invisible energy field, still crawling with Judicator patrols. Sing found me days later, battered but alive. She didn't ask questions. She just nodded and said, "You're one of us now." And I was. Life with the Hollow was different from the sterile nightmare of the nursery. Here, people trusted me. They needed me. I trained every day, honing my powers, learning to control the energy that surged beneath my skin. Sing was my fiercest teacher, pushing me beyond limits I didn't know I had. But power came with a price. Every time I used my abilities, I felt it, an ache deep in my mind, like a warning from some dark corner of my soul. One evening, Sing and I were on a recon mission near the Colorado border. The Judicators had set up a new communications hub, and we needed intel. We crawled through frozen forests, shadows among shadows, until we reached a ridge overlooking the compound. Below, armored vehicles patrolled the perimeter, and robotic sentries scanned the terrain with sharp beams. Sing whispered, "We get what we came for, and get out. No heroics." I nodded, but then it happened. The ground trembled. A low rumble grew into a roar. From the trees burst a hulk of metal and muscle, a Judicator enforcer, bigger and deadlier than any I'd seen. Its eyes glowed red, and it moved like a predator stalking prey. We froze. It locked onto us. I knew we were outmatched, but I also knew something the Judicator didn't. I could fight the field itself. I closed my eyes, reached into the electric storm within me, and unleashed a pulse. The enforcer staggered, then surged forward, swinging massive arms. I dodged, narrowly avoiding a blow that would have crushed me. The fight was brutal. Sing covered my back, firing an old-world plasma rifle with deadly precision. Together, we wore the beast down. But it wasn't over. The enforcer let out a deafening screech and vanished into a cloud of nanobots. Just like that, disappearing. We didn't get the intel that night, but we learned something important. The Judicators weren't just caging Earth. They were hunting us, and not just as prisoners. They wanted to find and control every Psy-Core like me. Back at the Hollow, I stood before the gathered survivors. "I'm not just running anymore," I said, voice steady despite the tremors inside. "They took the wrong kid." I saw hope flicker in their eyes. Hope that maybe, just maybe, we could turn the cage into a weapon. Because if they thought taking me was a mistake, they had no idea what they'd started. I was going to make sure of that. The Hollow wasn't just a network of survivors. It was a secret world buried beneath a dead Earth, threaded through caves, tunnels, and abandoned subway lines. It was where the last embers of humanity glowed, hidden from Judicator eyes and their omnipresent cage. But even in the darkness, nothing stayed quiet for long. It started with whispers. We were gathered in the main hall of what had once been Denver's underground transit hub. Rows of dusty seats repurposed as benches, flickering LED strips patched together with scavenged power cells. Sing was pacing, her face a mask of worry. I was leaning against a metal column, trying to steady the storm raging inside me. "Something's moving," she said, voice low. "Not enforcers. Something else." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Reports. People hearing voices on the comm lines. Strange signals in the data streams. Shadows in places where no one should be." I glanced at the gathered faces, weathered, tired, but not broken. Everyone was listening. Everyone was afraid. We had learned to fear the obvious. The Judicators, their enforcers, the containment field. But this was something else. The Hollow's communications were always a fragile thing, patchy radio waves, encrypted signals bouncing between dead satellites and battered ground stations. Every message was a lifeline. But now those lines were crackling with static and something else. Whispers in an alien tongue, faint but unmistakable. "We think it's coming from the old world," Singh said. "From the ruins of the tech district." I clenched my fists. The old world was where humanity's greatest creations had lived, the last hope before the cage fell. And now it seemed those creations were talking back. We set out at first light. I was with Singh, Jax, and Mira, three of the Hollow's best scouts. We moved through frozen forests, the crunch of snow underfoot the only sound besides our quiet breaths. The air was thick with tension. Every shadow felt alive. Hours later, we reached the ruins. It looked like a graveyard for machines, twisted metal towers, broken satellites, and shattered data terminals half buried in ice. But as we advanced, I saw it. A faint glow pulsing beneath the ice. A beacon. Mira knelt by the frozen ground and wiped away the frost, revealing an ancient console blinking with life. I tapped the surface, and the screen flickered to life. A cascade of data poured out, coded messages, fragments of programs, and something else, a voice. But it wasn't human. It was alien. The voice spoke in riddles, fragments of phrases that sent chills down my spine. "We are the Watchers. You are not alone. The cage will fall." We looked at each other, breath caught. Who or what was sending this? Suddenly, alarms blared. From the shadows emerged a patrol of Judicator peacekeepers. Their armor glinted cold under the pale sun. We were trapped. Jax raised his plasma rifle and fired. The battle erupted in a burst of light and noise. Sparks flew as energy blasts ricocheted off concrete walls. I felt the power surge inside me, warm and fierce. I reached out with my Psy-Core, sending a shockwave that knocked several peacekeepers off balance. Sing moved like a ghost, precise and deadly. Mira provided cover fire, her calm voice steadying us all. But there were too many. The Judicators advanced with relentless efficiency. I knew we couldn't hold the line forever. I made a choice. I hacked into the beacon's core and overloaded its circuits, sending a pulse that short-circuited the peacekeepers' armor. They stumbled, giving us precious seconds. "Fall back," Singh ordered. We retreated into the icy forest, hearts pounding. Back in camp, we pieced together what we'd found. The voice, the Watchers. It was a message from an ancient alien intelligence, one that had been monitoring Earth long before the Judicators arrived. And they were warning us. The cage wasn't just physical. It was a trap, a test. The Judicators were part of a larger game, one humanity barely understood. That night, I lay awake, the whispers echoing in my mind. The cage might be unbreakable, but maybe, just maybe, the key was in the shadows. The day after we fled the ruins, The hollow was restless. The whispers we'd intercepted from the alien beacon haunted every corner of the underground network. People looked at me differently now, as if I was a living bridge to something beyond their understanding. Sing, ever sharp, saw the shift and didn't like it. She pulled me aside near the entrance to one of the tunnels where the stale air smelled of dust and old iron. "We need to talk," she said, voice low but firm. "That signal, it's more than just a message. It's a call, and if the adjudicators can detect it, so can others." I nodded. "Others? You mean aliens?" Her eyes darkened. "Not sure, but we're not alone in this cage. And whoever's reaching out, they might be friend or foe." Those words hung in the cold air like a warning. The truth was, I had felt the pulse deep inside me ever since the nursery. That strange energy, the Psi-Core, was linked somehow to the signal. But how? And why now? I paced the dimly lit hall, the weight of responsibility settling heavy on my shoulders. People needed hope, and I needed answers. That night, I returned to the beacon's remains, now secured in a makeshift lab beneath the hollow. Mira and Jax were working with me, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow of ancient tech. We were trying to decode the fragments, piece by piece, but it was like assembling a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Suddenly, the console beeped, a new message. The screen blinked alive with static before the words resolved. "The ghost signal is awake." "What the hell is that?" Jax muttered. "No idea," I replied, heart pounding. We scanned deeper. Patterns emerged, complex, layered transmissions pulsing through space and time. This wasn't just a message, it was a beacon, a trap, or a lifeline, depending on who you asked. Singh barged into the room, her expression grim. "They found us." Her voice was barely a whisper. I swallowed hard. "Who?" I asked. "The adjudicators. They're scrambling fleets closer than ever. And worse, something else." The hollow mobilized quickly. We prepared for evacuation, gathering supplies, arming ourselves, and alerting safe houses across the network. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a fight for survival. It was the start of something new. Hours later, deep in the control room, I stared at the signal source coordinates. It was a ghost world, a desolate moon orbiting a shattered star, far beyond anything humans had explored, a place where no one had returned. "Sing," I said, "we have to go." She hesitated, then nodded. "We bring what we can, but this isn't a rescue mission. It's a search for answers." The journey was brutal. The shuttle shook violently as we blasted through the fractured asteroid belt surrounding the shattered star system. Stars glimmered coldly through cracked windows, like distant eyes watching our every move. Inside, the crew was tense but focused. Mira double-checked weapons. Jax ran diagnostics. And I, alone with my thoughts, felt the Psi-Core thrumming, like a beacon within me responding to the ghost signal. When we landed, the moon was a frozen wasteland. Mountains of ice, jagged cliffs, and endless silence. No atmosphere, no warmth, no mercy. We suited up and stepped onto the surface, every breath a sharp hiss through my helmet. Ahead, the ruins of a massive structure loomed, half buried in ice, its dark metal bones reaching toward the empty sky. "The source," Singh said. Inside, the air was cold but breathable, somehow preserved by technology long dead. The walls hummed with dormant power. We followed the corridors, lights flickering, shadows dancing on the edges of our vision. Then, suddenly, the ghost signal pulsed stronger. It wasn't a voice anymore. It was a presence. I felt it inside me, a connection that was both terrifying and exhilarating. "Sing," I whispered. "It's calling me." She nodded, eyes wide. "We're close." We entered a vast chamber. In its center floated a sphere of shifting energy, pulsing with alien light. The ghost signal. It wasn't just a beacon. It was a consciousness. It spoke, not in words, but in feelings, pain, hope, warning. A warning of a greater cage beyond the adjudicators, a cosmic threat looming on the edge of the galaxy. "We are the last line," the presence seemed to say. "And you, human, are the key." I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by the weight of it all. But beneath the fear was something stronger, a fierce, human defiance. They thought the cage would break us. They didn't know we were already fighting back. Back on the shuttle, with the ghost signal sealed in a containment module, Singh looked at me. "This changes everything." I nodded, hands still trembling. The war isn't just for Earth anymore. The stars outside were cold and distant, but inside me burned a fire that no cage could contain. The shuttle's engines hummed a cold lullaby as we hurtled away from the ghost moon. The containment module, cradling the ghost signal, sat secured in the cargo bay, a silent, pulsing enigma wrapped in alien energy. But the atmosphere inside our ship was anything but calm. Singh stood near the cockpit, arms crossed, as sharp as ever. Mira was scanning through data on her tablet, fingers flying. Jax was cleaning his rifle with mechanical precision. And me? I sat alone, my mind a storm of questions and dread. We touched something ancient, something bigger than the Judicators, something that shattered every assumption we'd ever had about the cage, the war, and our place in the universe. I tried to steady my breathing, but the psychor inside me buzzed like an electric storm, each pulse of the ghost signal echoing through my veins. It felt as if the alien presence wasn't just a distant voice. It was tethered to me, a link, maybe a warning, or even a call to arms. Farhan, Singh's voice cut through my thoughts. We're getting an incoming transmission from the Council. The Council, the ruling command of the Hollow, the last bastion of human resistance. I wiped the sweat from my brow and nodded. Put it through. The screen flickered to life, and the stern face of Commander Ilera appeared. Her sharp eyes held the weariness of 1,000 battles, but also a steely resolve. Report, she demanded without preamble. I took a breath and recounted everything: the alien beacon, the ghost signal, the warning of a cosmic threat. Ilera listened, expression unreadable. When I finished, she sighed deeply. You've stirred something, Farhan. The Judicators have increased patrols. Our scouts report new, unidentified ships in the outer systems, ships unlike anything we've seen. She paused. This goes beyond Earth. It's a galaxy-wide cage, and we're just one cell in it. The weight of her words sank deep. The cage wasn't just a prison around Earth. It was a network, a cosmic snare designed to contain civilizations, control their evolution, and keep them in line. And we were waking up inside it. Singh was already plotting our next move. We need allies. If the Judicators aren't the only threat, then we have to find others who resist. Mira chimed in, voice sharp. There are records, scattered, fragmented, of other enclaves, other survivors on distant planets. Some fled the cage generations ago. Jax leaned forward. Then it's a race. We find them before the cage tightens. I felt a surge of hope mixed with fear. Humanity was no longer alone in its struggle. But if the cage was galaxy-wide, how many worlds had already fallen? How many voices were silenced forever? The next days blurred into frantic preparation. We gathered supplies, reprogrammed ships, and sent coded messages through hidden channels. The ghost signal pulsed constantly, a reminder that the universe was watching. One night, I stood outside the shuttle, staring up at the starfield through the transparent hull. The stars glittered cold and distant, silent witnesses to the cage we were trapped in. And yet, somewhere out there, others were fighting too. Suddenly, the ship's alarm screamed. Contact! Hostile ships approaching. I raced to the control room. The viewport was a chaotic swirl of lights, sleek alien vessels, faster and deadlier than the Judicators. They're here, Singh said grimly. The battle erupted instantly. Energy beams scorched the void. Missiles streaked past in deadly arcs. The shuttle shook as I dove for cover. I grabbed the psychor, focusing its energy. A wave surged from me, rippling through space. It disrupted the attacker's systems, buying us precious seconds. Jax and Mira returned fire with ruthless precision. Singh coordinated our evasive maneuvers like a maestro. The fight was brutal and relentless. One ship rammed us, tearing through the hull. Explosions rocked the cabin. Smoke filled the corridors. But we held. The attackers retreated, leaving behind a silent warning. The cage's shadows were closing in. After the battle, we assessed the damage. The ghost signal was intact but glowing brighter, almost alive. I felt its presence inside me grow stronger, a constant hum beneath my skin. Ilera's voice crackled over the comm. We can't wait. We have to act. The plan was clear but dangerous. We would travel to the furthest known enclave, a hidden world called Arden Prime. It was rumored to be the heart of resistance, a spark of hope in the darkness. As we prepared to jump through the wormhole, I looked at my team. We're not just fighting to survive, I said. We're fighting to break the cage. Singh nodded. To reclaim our future. The stars outside blurred as we accelerated into the unknown. The cage was vast, but humanity's fire burned brighter than any prison, and I was ready to light the way. The jump through the wormhole was disorienting, stars stretching and warping into endless streaks of light, the hum of the engines vibrating through my bones. For a moment, I let myself hope. After months of running, hiding, fighting, maybe the universe would finally show us a glimmer of mercy. But hope is a dangerous thing. When the stars snapped back into place, we were in a system unknown to me, a cluster of 3 suns blazing down on a planet that looked like fire and ice had battled for dominion. Ardent Prime. The shuttle's sensors scanned the planet's surface. It was mountainous, covered in thick forests that glowed faintly at night with bioluminescent flora and deep caverns riddled beneath the crust. The readings showed signs of a thriving, hidden population, a civilization surviving in defiance of the cage. Singh was the first to speak, voice tight with anticipation. "This is it, Ardent Prime." I stared out the viewport. The vibrant green forest sprawling below like veins of life beneath a scarred world. My pulse quickened. We need to find the Enclave, and fast. Our descent was rough. The atmosphere was thick and charged with static. Lightning arced in jagged streaks across the twilight sky, illuminating the forest canopy in bursts of electric blue. Jax gripped the controls tightly, his knuckles white. Mira monitored the comms, fingers poised over the console. As we touched down in a clearing surrounded by ancient trees, the shuttle's alarms blared again. Incoming contacts. I ducked instinctively as outside the clearing, humanoid figures emerged from the mist. They were armed but wary, dressed in a patchwork of armor and tech scavenged from decades of survival. One stepped forward, a woman with fierce eyes and a scar running down her cheek. "Who are you?" she demanded, voice steady but guarded. I met her gaze, steady and unflinching. "I'm Farhan. We come from the Hollow. We're here because the cage is bigger than we thought. We need allies." Her eyes flickered with something unreadable. Hope? Suspicion? Both. "We don't trust strangers easily," she said. "But if you bring news from the stars, you have a place with us. Follow me." We were led through thick forests and winding caves to a settlement carved into the mountainside, Ardent Prime's hidden heart. The Enclave was a marvel of resilience and ingenuity. Homes and workshops built from reclaimed ship parts, lush gardens fed by hydroponics, and towering watchtowers bristling with energy weapons. Inside a communal hall, leaders gathered, warriors, scientists, and survivors who had never seen Earth but knew the cage's cruel grip intimately. They listened intently as I recounted the ghost's signal, the judicators, and the looming cosmic threat. A man named Kale, the Enclave's commander, leaned forward. "We fought to hold this sanctuary for generations, but the cage is tightening here too. The judicators sent hunters last cycle." His voice hardened. "Your arrival, it could change the tide. We worked together, combining our knowledge and resources." Mira and the Enclave's engineers hacked ancient alien tech buried beneath Ardent Prime's surface. Singh trained local fighters in guerrilla tactics. Jax mapped out strategic points for defense. And I, haunted by the Psycor's growing power within me, struggled to harness its potential. Days turned into nights filled with relentless training, planning, and repairs. But the peace was fragile. One evening, as I walked the outer perimeter, the ghost signal pulsed violently. My vision blurred. Voices echoed in my mind. Alien, urgent, desperate. "We're coming," the presence warned. I stumbled back to the command center, breath ragged. "We have a problem," I said. Kale's eyes narrowed. "Judicator hunters?" "No. Worse. Sensors detected a massive fleet entering orbit. Ships not like the Judicators, sleek, fast, and cloaked in dark energy that warped space itself. The cage was closing in. The Enclave prepared for battle. Hollow and ardent warriors stood shoulder to shoulder. The air was thick with tension and resolve. When the enemy fleet struck, it was sudden and brutal. Energy beams tore through the sky. Explosions shattered the silence. I felt the Psi core awaken inside me fully. Its energy surged like wildfire. I raised my hands, unleashing a pulse that rippled through the battlefield. Enemy ships faltered, their systems disrupted. But the cost was high. One of the shuttle's engines exploded, sending debris raining down. Singh yelled orders to rally the fighters. Mira and Jax worked frantically to stabilize the power core. In the chaos, I glimpsed the scarred woman from the clearing Arden, fighting with ferocity and grace. She caught my eye and nodded, a silent pact forged in fire. Hours later, the enemy retreated. The Enclave was battered but unbroken. Kale approached me, hand extended. "We fight together. For freedom. For the future." I grasped it firmly. "We will break the cage." That night, under twin moons, I stood with my new allies, staring up at the stars. The cage was vast, but so was humanity's will to survive. The war was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I believed we had a chance. The dawn on Ardent Prime came shrouded in thick, swirling mists, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. The battle had left the Enclave bruised but unbowed, and though the scars were fresh, the fire within us was burning brighter than ever. I could feel it deep inside, the same fire that had kept humanity alive through millennia of cages, wars, and betrayals. It wasn't just the psychor humming beneath my skin. It was the raw will to fight, to push beyond limits, to claim our destiny. That morning, I woke early, the glow from the bioluminescent plants outside the window casting eerie patterns on the walls. I had dreams, fragmented and wild, flashes of starships tearing through voids, strange alien faces, and a voice calling out in a language older than time. Mira was already up, poring over the data streams from the last battle. Farhan, she said without looking up, the ghost signal's intensity is increasing exponentially. Whatever this power is, it's awakening. I nodded slowly. I felt it too. A surge of energy, wild and unpredictable. Can you control it? I asked. She glanced up, eyes dark with worry. Not yet, but I think the Enclave's ancient tech might help us stabilize it. Singh was already coordinating with Kale's forces, organizing patrols and scouting missions. I want you ready for anything. He told me when I joined him. The enemy will come back stronger. We have to be ready. His confidence was contagious. Jax was busy upgrading our weapons, reinforcing armor, integrating energy shields salvaged from wreckage. That afternoon, Kale took me to a hidden chamber beneath the Enclave, a cavern carved into the heart of the mountain, lined with crystalline formations that shimmered like stars trapped in stone. This is the core nexus, he explained, the source of the Enclave's power. It's connected to the ancient technology buried here, artifacts from before the cage was built. I ran my fingers over the smooth crystal surface, feeling a faint hum. This could amplify your psychor, Kale said, eyes locked on mine. Give you control over that energy. The promise of control was tempting, but also terrifying. What if the power inside me was too much? The following days were a blur of experiments and training. Mira worked with me, interfacing the psychor with the nexus. The process was exhausting. Waves of energy crashed through me, and sometimes I lost control, bursts of light erupting without warning. Once, a surge knocked me off my feet, sending me crashing into a wall. But every failure brought new understanding. Meanwhile, outside the Enclave, the enemy wasn't idle. Scouts reported increased movement, mysterious ships patrolling the outer atmosphere, probing for weaknesses. Kale called an emergency council. We need to strike first, he declared. Hit their supply lines before they can regroup. The plan was risky. We would send a strike team to sabotage an enemy base hidden in a nearby asteroid belt, a fortress carved from rock and steel, guarded by automated turrets and patrol drones. Singh volunteered to lead the assault. I'm not letting you go alone, I said firmly. He smiled. You're coming too. You've got a gift, Farhan. Time to use it. That night, we prepared for battle. The Enclave's hangar buzzed with energy as fighters loaded weapons and calibrated gear. I felt the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders, not just for myself, but for every soul counting on us to survive. We launched under the cover of darkness. The shuttle darted through the asteroid field, weaving between colossal rocks like a ghost. Sensors picked up enemy drones patrolling the perimeter. Mira hacked the defense grid remotely, disabling turrets one by one. The moment we touched down, the assault began. Energy weapons flared, echoing off the asteroid's rocky walls. Singh and I moved as one, clearing corridors and disabling enemy systems. At one point, we encountered a squad of Judicator hunters, elite soldiers with armor that shimmered like liquid metal. They charged, blades humming with lethal energy. I raised my hands, summoning the psychor's power. A wave of force exploded outward, sending them flying back. Singh fired precise shots, taking down the stunned enemies. We breached the control room and planted explosives on the power core. Time was running out. As we retreated, alarms blared and enemy reinforcements closed in. The shuttle shook violently as energy blasts rocked the hull. Myra's voice came over the calm but urgent. Explosives armed. Detonation in T-minus 30 seconds. We sprinted through the corridors, dodging debris and fire. At the last second, we leapt into the shuttle. The asteroid erupted behind us in a fiery explosion that lit up the void. Back at Arden Prime, the victory was bittersweet. We had dealt a blow to the enemy, but the war was far from over. That night, I stood alone on a cliff overlooking the Enclave. The twin moons cast pale light on the forest below. The The Psy-Core thrummed in my chest, a reminder that the fire within me was only growing stronger. I whispered into the night, "We will break the cage," because deep down, I knew it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about reclaiming our future for all of humanity. The war was not just outside the Enclave's walls. It was inside my mind. After the assault on the asteroid base, I should have felt victorious, a step closer to breaking the cage. But something gnawed at me, a shadow creeping through my thoughts. The Psy-Core inside me thrummed louder now, but with it came fragmented memories, flashes of places I'd never been, faces I didn't recognize, and a voice that whispered in the dark. It started as a flicker, like a faint echo bouncing through my brain. I was walking the Enclave's quiet halls when suddenly, the world around me blurred. Colors bled into one another, sounds warped into strange melodies. And then, I saw her, a woman, not from Arden Prime, not from any place I knew. She had eyes like molten silver and hair that shimmered with starlight. She looked right through me, speaking words in a tongue that twisted in my mind. I staggered back, gasping. Mira caught me before I fell. "Farhan, what's wrong?" I shook my head, trying to clear the haze. "I don't know. I'm seeing things. Memories, maybe, or something else." Later, in the core Nexus chamber, I sat with Kale and Mira, sharing what I'd experienced. Kale's expression darkened. The Psy-Core is connected to something ancient, something beyond our understanding. It's linked to the origins of the cage. You're not just a weapon, you're a key. Mira added, the ghost signal, the judicators, the cage itself, they might all be tied to this mystery. Determined to uncover the truth, I volunteered for a journey into the Nexus itself, a risky plunge into the source of my power, hoping to unlock the secrets buried in my mind. Mira and Kale prepared the chamber, syncing my Psy-Core with the Nexus crystal lattice. As I placed my hand on the glowing surface, energy surged through me, not painful, but overwhelming. My consciousness fractured, and I was pulled into a labyrinth of memories, both mine and something else's. I saw a civilization unlike any I'd known. Tall, elegant beings whose technology bent reality itself. They called themselves the architects. They had built the cage, not as a prison, but as a safeguard, a containment field designed to quarantine a cosmic plague that threatened to consume entire galaxies. I watched scenes of war and desperation, their once glorious empire collapsing under the weight of this unseen enemy. Then, a revelation. Among the architects was a faction that rebelled, believing the cage was a tool for control, not protection. They had betrayed their own people, sparking a civil war that shattered their civilization. I woke gasping, sweat pouring down my face. Myra's voice was steady beside me. "You're back. How do you feel?" "Like I've seen 1,000 lifetimes," I said. "And like the cage is more than just a prison, it's a battleground." Kale stepped forward. "This changes everything. The Judicators might be remnants of the Architect rebels, hunting those who seek to undo the cage." I clenched my fists. If that's true, then we're not just fighting for freedom. We're fighting for the fate of the universe. Days passed in a blur of preparation and reflection. The Enclave trained harder, knowing that the enemy was more complex and deadly than we'd imagined. One night, as I stood watch on the cliffside, Arden joined me. "You're carrying a heavy burden," she said quietly. I nodded. "The past is catching up with me, with all of us." She looked out at the stars. "Whatever it is, we face it together." Suddenly, the comms crackled to life. "Incoming transmission. Unidentified vessel approaching." Jax's voice was tense. "It's a ship, but it's not hostile. They're requesting permission to land." We gathered at the landing pad as a sleek craft descended, its surface shimmering like liquid chrome. The hatch opened, and out stepped a figure cloaked in silver armor, the architect's symbol emblazoned on their chest. "I am Elora," she said, voice calm but authoritative. "I come with a message and a warning." Elora revealed that she was part of the architect remnant seeking to atone for their ancestors' sins. They had been watching humanity, waiting for a champion to wield the Psy-Core and unlock the cage's true purpose. But time is running out, Elora warned. The cosmic plague is awakening again, and the cage's power is weakening. I felt the weight of the universe pressed down on me. The war was bigger than we thought, a cosmic reckoning that would decide the fate of all life. As Elora shared ancient knowledge and technology, we prepared for the coming storm. The Psy-Core's fire within me was no longer just a weapon. It was the hope of a new dawn. That night, staring at the twin moons, I made a vow. No matter the cost, no matter the darkness ahead, I would fight. For the cage, for humanity, for the future. The air was thick with tension as the Enclave prepared for the final battle. I stood at the highest point of the fortress, staring out over the dark horizon where the enemy fleets were gathering like storm clouds ready to burst. The Psychor thrummed in my chest, a steady, pulsing heartbeat that connected me to everything: the Enclave, my comrades, and now the very fate of the universe. Elra's warning had shaken us all. The cosmic plague was not just some distant threat. It was awakening, hungry to consume. The cage that had held it for millennia was failing, and the Judicators, those merciless hunters, were desperate to keep it sealed, no matter the cost. Kale approached, his face grim but resolute. "This is it, Farhan. Whatever happens next, we fight as one." I nodded, feeling the weight of every soul in the Enclave on my shoulders. The enemy fleet emerged from the void like a shadowy leviathan, ships bristling with weapons, their designs alien and terrifying. But we were ready. The Psychor surged within me, responding to the Nexus's call. I closed my eyes, reaching deep inside to harness the fire that had been growing since the cage's first breach. The battle erupted in a fury of light and sound. Our fighters swarmed the enemy, energy blasts cutting through darkness. I led a squadron on a desperate assault, weaving between enemy vessels, striking at weak points. But this was no ordinary fight. The Judicators unleashed horrors, biomechanical beasts that twisted and warped reality itself. They tore through our ranks, forcing us to adapt on the fly. I felt a familiar surge, the voice from my visions calling out. It was the Architect's last hope, the flame of defiance against oblivion. With a cry, I unleashed the Psychor's power, a wave of energy that shattered enemy ships and disrupted the plague's dark influence. The tide of battle shifted, but victory came at a cost. Kale fell, struck down by a Judicator hunter. I caught him as he collapsed, his eyes shining with pride. "You've done more than I ever dreamed," he whispered. Rage and sorrow fueled me. I vowed to finish what he started. The final push took us to the heart of the enemy's fortress, a swirling maelstrom of dark energy. Elra and I combined our powers, the Nexus and the Architect's ancient technology amplifying the Psychor. We faced the plague's source, a living darkness, a beast of endless hunger. It lashed out, trying to consume our light. The battle was brutal. Every strike burned my soul. Every movement was a dance with death. But the fire within would not be extinguished. With one final, desperate surge, I channeled everything into a blast of pure energy. The darkness screamed and fractured, collapsing into nothingness. Silence fell. The cage was broken. The plague was banished. We stood amidst the ruins, battered but alive. Elora looked at me with hope. "The future is yours, Farhan. Humanity has earned its place among the stars." I gazed up at the dawn breaking over Ardent Prime. The fire within me burned brighter than ever. This was just the beginning.